Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a law so powerful that it shaped the very foundation of America's expansion, governance, and rights, laying the groundwork for our nation's growth and uniting new territories under a single legal framework. In 1787, the Northwest Ordinance set a precedent that would echo through centuries of legal battles, shaping everything from civil liberties to the future of slavery in the United States. This was America's first major law, and its impact resonates today, guiding the legal and moral principles that define us. Stay tuned to uncover how this one law revolutionized the path of a nation. And the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, passed by the Confederation Congress, stands as a cornerstone in American legal history. As the first major piece of federal legislation enacted by the United States under the Articles of Confederation, it aimed to establish a framework for the governance and expansion of the Northwest Territory, which included areas that would later become the states of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The ordinance was born out of necessity, as the young nation sought to define its territorial boundaries, manage westward expansion, and address the governance of newly acquired lands. The legal significance of the ordinance cannot be overstated, for it established fundamental principles that would guide the growth of the United States. The law created a system for the creation of new states from territories, allowing for the smooth transition from territorial governance to statehood. It outlined a three-step process for territorial governance, with a focus on ensuring that territories had a pathway to statehood once they reached a population threshold. Importantly, the ordinance also enshrined rights for settlers, including religious freedom, trial by jury, and a ban on slavery, setting a precedent for the future governance of the United States. These provisions highlighted the balance between promoting economic and territorial growth while safeguarding individual liberties. Furthermore, the Northwest Ordinance influenced the development of the nation's legal framework by establishing the principle that the federal government would have ultimate authority over its territories while still allowing for local self-government once a territory achieved statehood. This balance between federal oversight and local autonomy would become a recurring theme in American constitutional law. The inclusion of the ban on slavery in the Northwest Territory, while limited in scope, marked a crucial step in the nation's legal and moral development, offering a glimpse into the evolving debate over the institution of slavery that would intensify in the decades following its enactment. It was also the first time that the federal government had taken a firm stance on the issue of slavery in a newly acquired territory. Moreover, the Northwest Ordinance became a template for the governance of future territories, providing a framework that would be replicated in the formation of other states as the nation expanded westward. Its provisions also laid the groundwork for the establishment of public education, with land being set aside for schools, signaling the importance of education in the nation's long-term development. The ordinance's legal significance extended beyond its time, shaping the very principles of federalism and territorial expansion that would continue to define the nation's growth throughout the 19th century. It was a testament to the vision of America's founding fathers as they sought to create a framework for a nation that would remain united and governed by laws even as it expanded across vast territories. And the principles outlined in the Northwest Ordinance extended far beyond territorial expansion and governance. They set the stage for an enduring national character, one rooted in the ideals of freedom, opportunity, and unity. As the first major law of its kind, it was not just a legal framework. It was a vision for a new nation and a new future. It provided a model of how the nation could grow and expand, how communities could evolve from frontier settlements into thriving states, while ensuring that each new state would be bound by the same values of justice, liberty, and equality that defined the founding of the country. In creating a path to statehood, the ordinance illustrated a pragmatic approach to governance, recognizing the importance of stability and structure, yet it allowed for the flexibility necessary to accommodate the needs of a growing and diverse population. Its success depended on the ability to strike a balance between the interests of the individual territories and the broader needs of the nation as a whole. Between local autonomy and federal oversight, this vision would continue to resonate through future legal and political debates as the United States grappled with questions of power governance and the nature of its federal system. And the Northwest Ordinance also reflected the early American commitment to equality and justice, signaling that these values would be deeply embedded in the nation's legal systems. The inclusion of provisions for civil liberties, such as the protection of religious freedom, trial by jury, and the establishment of local governance, provided a foundation that would shape future laws and practices. These rights were not simply a reflection of idealistic principles, but a recognition of the practical necessity of building a society where citizens could live in peace and freedom without fear of oppression. In this sense, the ordinance transcended its immediate purpose, becoming a symbol of the potential for progress and the belief that a nation could grow in a way that protected the dignity and rights of its citizens. And at the same time, the ban on slavery in the Northwest Territory, a seemingly small provision, laid the groundwork for future confrontations over slavery and freedom that would shape the trajectory of the United States for years to come. Though it applied only to a specific region, its impact was profound, signaling a commitment to anti-slavery principles that would eventually clash with the interests of slaveholding states. It provided an early glimpse of the ideological divide that would come to define the nation's moral and legal struggles in the decades ahead. As much as the ordinance embodied the ideals of unity and justice, it also demonstrated the reality that a nation's laws are never static. They are shaped by the ongoing debates and conflicts that emerge as society evolves. The conflicts over slavery, civil rights, and federal versus state power that would dominate the American political landscape in the 19th century were already foreshadowed in the debates surrounding the ordinance. And additionally, the establishment of public education in the Northwest Ordinance underscored the recognition that the strength of the nation lay not only in its territorial expansion, but also in its intellectual and cultural development. By setting aside land for public schools, the ordinance laid the groundwork for a national education system that would be integral to the growth of an informed, responsible citizenry. This emphasis on education as a public good would shape the nation's educational policies in the years that followed, reinforcing the belief that an educated populace was essential to the survival of the democratic experiment. In doing so, the ordinance helped define the principles that would guide American law and society as the nation expanded westward, creating a framework not only for governance but also for cultivation of the ideas, values, and institutions that would sustain the nation's future. And the Northwest Ordinance, therefore, was much more than a law. It was a statement of intent, a blueprint for a nation that aspired to greatness, built on the ideals of liberty, equality, and justice. Its legacy continues to shape the American legal system and serves as a reminder that the most important laws are those that embody the core principles that define a society. It set a standard for future governance, offering a legal model that balanced federal oversight with local self-determination, all while ensuring the protection of individual rights. The ordinance was an early testament to the fact that law is not just a set of rules, but a reflection of a nation's values and its vision for the future. The creation of this framework represented a pivotal moment in the nation's history, laying the foundation for the growth and expansion of the United States, while holding true to the principles of justice and liberty that were at the heart of the nation's founding. And the Northwest Ordinance in its provisions was not simply a legal directive. It was a legal expression of the nation's founding principles. It was a direct assertion that as America expanded, its legal and moral commitments must expand with it. One of the most critical aspects of this legislation was the legal mechanism it provided for territorial governance. The ordinance set forth clear processes for the management and eventual statehood of territories, setting a precedent that would echo through future territorial laws. It articulated a path for territories to achieve statehood once a specific population threshold was met, but it did not simply confer statehood. It imposed a framework for governance, creating territorial legislatures, courts, and local systems of law, which ensured that the growing territories would eventually be integrated into the Union under the same structure that governed the original states. In this regard, the ordinance was a pioneer in the creation of governance structures that could adapt to diverse and distant populations, paving the way for the future acquisition of vast territories under the expansionist policies that would follow. And equally critical was the principle that the federal government retained ultimate authority over its territories. While the ordinance allowed for local governance, it maintained a balance of power that recognized the necessity of federal oversight in preserving the Union and ensuring that the newly admitted states would adhere to the nation's core values. This concept of a strong federal presence in territorial governance would come to define much of American constitutional law, particularly in matters of national security, civil rights, and interstate relations. In the subsequent decades, this balance between federal power and states' rights would be hotly contested, especially in the aftermath of the Civil War, but the groundwork for this debate was laid in 1787 with the ordinance's clear assertion of federal authority over newly established territories, and the legal protections embedded within the ordinance, particularly the guarantee of religious freedom and trial by jury, reflect a deep commitment to the civil liberties of individuals. In an era where religious persecution was still prevalent in many parts of the world, the ordinance's guarantee of religious liberty marked a profound departure from the policies of many European nations. It established in no uncertain terms that the new territories would be governed by laws that respected the rights of individuals to worship freely without interference from the state. This protection of religious freedom would later be echoed in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and remains a cornerstone of American law. The establishment of trial by jury, another key element in the ordinance, guaranteed that individuals in the territories would not be subject to arbitrary rule, a principle rooted deeply in English common law that had been fundamental to the American colonists' resistance to British rule. And however, the most striking legal aspect of the Northwest Ordinance was its provision for the prohibition of slavery in the Northwest Territory. While the ordinance's ban on slavery was limited in geographic scope, its implications were far-reaching. It marked the first significant legislative effort by the federal government to curtail the expansion of slavery in the United States, signaling the growing divide between the northern and southern states that would eventually culminate in the Civil War. This decision to prohibit slavery in territories that would later become states represented a significant shift in the legal landscape of the nation. It placed the federal government squarely on the side of abolitionism in the Western territories, while the Southern states would continue to champion the rights of slaveholders, setting the stage for the bitter legal and political battles that would define the antebellum period. The legal significance of this prohibition cannot be overstated, for it represented not only a moral stance, but also a legal framework for the eventual end of slavery in the United States, and the ordinance also recognized the importance of public education, setting aside land for the creation of schools in the territories. In doing so, it created a direct link between the development of the territory and the intellectual development of its citizens. Education was seen not just as a means of personal development, but as a tool for the advancement of society. The establishment of this principle reflected the belief that an informed citizenry was essential for the successful operation of a democracy. This emphasis on education as a public good would shape American legal and policy thinking for generations, influencing debates on the role of the government in providing education and the rights of individuals to access it. And in its entirety, the Northwest Ordinance was a foundational piece of legislation that set in motion many of the legal principles that would govern the United States for generations. It articulated a vision for the nation's future that was rooted in liberty, equality, and justice, and it laid the legal framework for the expansion of the nation's borders and the integration of new territories into the Union. While the law was limited in scope, its legal and moral implications were profound, and its legacy continues to be felt in the United States legal system today. The ordinance not only established the principles of governance and legal rights, but also served as a guiding document that would influence subsequent territorial laws and shape the trajectory of the nation's development, and the Northwest Ordinance's influence on American law was not limited to its provisions on territorial governance and civil liberties. It also had lasting effects on the development of American political structures, particularly in how new territories would interact with the established Union. By establishing a clear and defined path to statehood, the ordinance created a precedent that ensured the continued expansion of the nation under a consistent and organized system. This system was grounded in the legal principle of orderly territorial growth, which allowed new states to be admitted into the Union on equal footing with existing states. The impact of this principle was far-reaching, as it ensured that territories did not become subjects of imperial conquest or haphazardly governed regions. Instead, the ordinance provided a method for the peaceful and lawful incorporation of new territories into the United States, which helped maintain the stability and unity of the nation as it expanded westward. This orderly process also helped preserve the balance of power between states and the federal government, as it emphasized the importance of a clear and transparent process for political integration. And another aspect of the Northwest Ordinance that had significant legal ramifications was its provisions on land distribution. The law outlined a system for the sale and settlement of public lands in the Northwest Territory, establishing the framework for future land policies in the United States. These land policies would have profound effects on both the legal and social fabric of the nation. The ordinance's approach to land distribution also laid the groundwork for the development of land grant programs, which would later become a key tool in the expansion of education and infrastructure across the country. By making land available to settlers and ensuring its use for the public good, the ordinance helped foster an entrepreneurial spirit and encouraged westward migration. This system of land distribution also reflected a legal commitment to fostering a fair and equitable process for settlers, one that sought to balance the needs of the individual with the broader needs of the nation. In this way, the ordinance became a foundational document not only for the governance of new territories, but also for the development of a legal and economic system that would support the nation's growth, and the legal framework established by the Northwest Ordinance also had significant implications for the expansion of rights within the territories. One of the critical components of the ordinance was its provision for the establishment of a legal code that would govern the new territories, ensuring that settlers were subject to laws that respected their rights and freedoms. This legal code, which was modeled after existing state systems, was designed to protect the interests of individuals, particularly in the areas of property rights, contract enforcement, and personal freedoms. By providing a legal framework for the protection of these rights, the ordinance set the stage for the future development of American civil law. This emphasis on legal protections for settlers helped create a sense of stability and order in the new territories, allowing individuals to confidently engage in commerce, establish families, and build communities. It also helped prevent the development of feudal-like systems of governance that could have threatened individual liberties and economic progress. And equally important was the ordinance's role in defining the nature of federalism in the United States. By asserting federal control over the territories while also allowing for local self-government, the ordinance established a legal model for balancing the power between the federal government and state governments. This balance of power became a critical feature of American law, particularly in relation to issues of civil rights, states' rights, and the limits of federal power. The ordinance's approach to federalism provided a blueprint for how new states could integrate into the Union without disrupting the legal and political equilibrium that had been established in original states. This approach also laid the groundwork for the eventual development of the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, as it highlighted the need for a system of government that could manage the diverse interests of both the federal government and the individual states. And the legal implications of the Northwest Ordinance extended beyond its immediate impact on the territories and their inhabitants. It provided a legal foundation for the eventual establishment of the United States as a continental nation. By outlining a process for territorial expansion that was rooted in principles of justice, equality, and law, the ordinance helped ensure that as the nation grew, it would do so in a manner that was consistent with the values upon which it was founded. This emphasis on legal and moral consistency would shape American law for generations, influencing key debates on issues such as federalism, civil rights, and the expansion of the Union. Furthermore, the ordinance's provision for the establishment of public education, its prohibition on slavery, and its protection of individual liberties all pointed to a vision of a nation grounded in justice and fairness. This vision would continue to guide American legal and political developments as the country grappled with the complexities of growth, expansion, and the protection of individual rights.